Between conspiracy and the truth. This is Unhinged with Madyson Marquette.
I love dancing to that.
I do too. I felt I wanted to do that.
You should. You're doing the
Like
Trump dance.
the Trump band. Hello, everybody.
Um, First of all, before we start, well, I'll let Josh say it because he says it's better.
Yeah, just remember this is for entertainment purposes only. We've only kind of making this stuff up, and they're conspiracy theories, so they shouldn't be true. But if they are, well, we told you so. So now you know. With the disclaimer out of the way, this is Unhinged with the lovely and talented Madyson Marquette. Look, you know how hard it is to point in the direction of the
Let's point.
screen of the person, like it's the opposite
Listen,
direction.
guys, I love producer Josh, but the hardest part about having a producer for a show is that if you're having an epic hair day, which I thought I was, he
Yeah.
makes me wear these things so he can hear me better. So now I'm just on like, so I'm
To
gonna
your
wear these headphones so he can hear me better. He messed up my hair day, so I apologize for the not great.
So I ruined another hair day yesterday. My wife, she did her hair. It was amazing. She's walking around the house. She's like, God, I love this hair so much. And then I was like, Hey, you want to go for a walk? And she's like, You're gonna make my hair get all sweaty, and you're gonna ruin a perfectly
Ooh,
good hair day. Like
and
I,
it's
I
been
knew better. Then
windy.
I was like, you know what? No. And then we went and looked at flowers, and the wind took care of it anyway. But her hair still looked amazing.
Did you buy her sunflowers?
Oh yeah, we got flowers. We're getting ready. We're gonna do a garden. We're
Oh,
gonna
I love it.
start. I think we're gonna do something that's like tomatoes. We're gonna try really hard on because we want to can them, and it might take a. We got these bins that we're gonna fill with dirt and stuff. It's gonna be fantastic. And I hear it's really hard to grow that stuff in Colorado. So you know what I mean, growing tomatoes.
Yes. In Colorado, when I was pregnant with my oldest, I got on this kick because I wanted to cook homemade bread. No. When you're in elevation, literally at the top would be all crispy and great, and then I would cut into it and it would just be like mush. I'm like, "Ah." So
Well,
it's hard
yeah,
to grow things at elevation.
which is why we all buy bread machines out here because we let them do all the work, and
Yes,
even then,
I
it's
know.
still
My
not
ex
right.
had one, but he had bread machines, but he didn't make like homemade bread. He just bought the boxed bread. I was like, well, how is that any different?
I know. No,
It's
we make everything we choose. We're like tonight we're gonna do ciabatta. Tonight we're gonna do like a dinner roll one, which is amazing.
Oh my god, I can't
Oh,
wait. I'm gonna make a trip there soon, so I'm coming over. Tell your wife.
oh yeah,
I
and we've
expect
made
dinner.
blueberry butter. We've been making
Oh, that sounds amazing.
blue. We did a blueberry pie filling, peach butter. You know, and
Ooh,
everybody does these fundraising things around here for football. And now it's like get your Palisade peaches, right? So we just buy a crate and we
yeah,
just peach the crap out of them. So it's cool. It supports the school. It gives us money. It's the cheapest way for you to make your prepper food is to make it yourself. If you didn't know that.
yeah. Well, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
learned different things, but I'm not like the greatest cook. But like my oldest has gotten into it, so it's kind of fun because we all kind of like learn how to like make certain things together.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
awesome at a lot of things. I can't be great at everything, so cooking's just not my will.
No, I don't know. Like I let the wife do it. I'm a great cook, but I don't know how to preserve or bake. Oh, bake.
No. My
Certainly not.
husband told me the best thing about me getting because his stepmom, like she's awesome. And he's like, the best thing about you liking my parents is that she can teach you how to make a turkey for Thanksgiving.
Oh my God. That's like a dagger thrown. What do you mean I can't make a turkey?
I can't. I buy
Whoa.
it pre-made. I buy
Oh.
it from Honey Baked Ham. I just
Okay, I love some honey baked ham too. We have digressed to a point that I never thought we would. We're
yeah.
talking about food and canning. If you haven't taken that up as a hobby, you should. But
Yeah. That's not our topic today. Our topic,
yeah,
and I'm gonna let producer Josh like start us off because I like went down this rabbit hole today when he sent me a text about it. And we were gonna have Denise on. She is going to be on hopefully next week. She just had some, we just had to do some rescheduling. So she will absolutely be on. We just got to get that scheduled. So
yeah. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, and if you have been living under a rock, they found what looks like a massive structure underneath the Khafre pyramid in Egypt,
yeah.
and it's big. Like it's by modern industrial standards, it may not be repeatable. Like it's that large in some sections.
Yeah.
So when I threw this to your way and you started going down the rabbit hole, what'd you think?
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts because we've talked about like the underground cities and like that it like I know it's real. I believe it's real. I mean, you've had like there's just I know it's real. I've seen certain things. So when you see it like in Egypt, it's like how far back does this go? And is this like so biblical? Because and it's crazy because I was talking about this lady called me condescending today because I was
Mhm,
like, look, there's 777 books of the Bible. So when you
mhm.
hear things like this, is this part of what's missing from us? Like, is this what we're like, we don't know about because it's in the Bible, it's written about in the Bible? Like, is that Bible a guidebook to the like at this point, there just has to be an underground world, right? Like, you're
So
thinking, I hit a nerve,
no,
something
no, no, not at all. Because you're actually touching on
in a good way, a
what
nerve in a good way.
it, on a great one because you're touching on something that is so every like religion out there has an underworld, right? We saw it with the
Yes.
Egyptians. We saw it with like Hades, or with the Greeks and the Romans. There was always this sort of underworld, and people. There's always these stories like like Persephone in oh, I can't remember the Roman god of death. His name's escaping me. Persephone and or it's one of the Greek myths. Anyway,
Yes.
she's the reason we have the springs because Hades took her down to hell, right, and made her stay there. And the
Yes.
moment she ate, but the idea is that people would go down into to hell. They would make these journeys into the underworld. And in before we get to the Egyptian um, belief on the underworld, I want to also mention that this was done using a satellite technology. They use this synthetic aperture radar to scan this stuff from space. So let's give the context of the science first before I go into
Wait,
the
so they
story.
weren't there physically?
No, in fact, this stuff has been picked up by satellites. All right, and it's
Okay.
called SAR, synthetic aperture radar. And what it does is it picks up the acoustical vibrations of the sound of the medium that you're traveling
Yeah.
through. And from space, you can start getting deep underground scans. So
And
imagine
I
like
believe that.
so
I
imagine
believe
that.
that because when we do extractions and we have like at nighttime, there's a technology. I'm not going to pretend to know what it is, but you can see inside the houses. And if we do go underground, they are in our ear telling us what is in front of us, to the side of us. So I do know that that exists.
Well,
I'm
yeah, and
sorry. Didn't mean
that's
to cut you
that.
off.
So that's sensing technology, right? That's kind of the idea
Yeah.
behind it is that you can look through things, you can hear things, and then what you're talking about, like, has communication value and all that stuff. This is a space-based satellite, so it just looks down deep into the earth. It picks up these sound waves, it bounces up to us. Don't ask the science on it. I'm not an engineer, but essentially they can build a map, or at least hot spots, cold spots of
Yeah.
what's underneath a structure. All right, so that science alone probably scares all the people in like Area 51 and all the deep underground
Oh, yeah.
military bases out there, right? Because suddenly they know. So it doesn't surprise me there's been some people out there saying this stuff isn't real, but it's real.
Yeah.
And what really blows my mind on the whole thing is that it started discovering what were 63-meter deep shafts going from the bottom of the Khafre pyramid straight down, which looks like a spiral staircase or a spiral tunnel taking it down, right? I can't say that it's a staircase or not, but imagine there's a big cylinder and there's a stairway making its way down. I'm going to try to pull a picture of it now.
I
And
mean, that's crazy to me because it's like what's crazy to think about just that technology, like think about just in our homes and like privacy and how much they've spied on us, like that they're probably doing that now. That's why I always hear like people, oh, I'm on the run. No, you're not, because you can't be, because they know where you're at. It doesn't matter where you are
if
when you
they
put this on
really
the screen.
know, yeah, if they really want to know where you're at, you're at. All right, so here's one of the scans. So you can see that there's a red line that's making its way down the picture on the left there. And if you
Yeah.
see beneath it, there's a whole bunch of these shafts that are going down. And the red that you see there is actually what they call, I think, negative void spaces, which means that there's some sort of like tunnel down and a spiraling to the end of these things
Yeah.
below it. And that's kind of how that's kind of what they picked up for the screen. I'm grabbing another one here while we're waiting on that one. But what that
Yeah.
has shown is that there's these complex. There's a lot more underneath the facility than anybody ever thought possible. I put one more up if you could just show that. The first thing they notice is these five structures, right, sitting on
Jeez.
top of this. So that's inside the pyramid, right? That's inside of the pyramid. And then there's these shafts that are going down. And these things are huge.
That they are huge, which makes you think, is this like what they're getting their electricity and different things? Like, is that what they're getting from that? I mean, because like we have the like if I'm looking at that, like you're kind of looking at like the electric poles, right? They're obviously built a little bit different, but I would think underground they might need to be built a little bit different.
Yeah. And the other thing is we don't know if they're solid or if they're block based. If these are solid, there would be like I think 13 or 15 of these columns. And if they're solid pieces of granite that are 63 meters long and
Right.
X amount of meters wide, that would be the biggest stone cutting that ever existed on the planet. And it's beneath the pyramid.
Well, and think about this. How long has like the government known about things like this? And we all think I'm gonna go on the conspiracy thing here. We all think like it's the Rockefellers and all these people like controlling the world. What if it's like these underground people that have all the power?
So, yeah, save those thoughts because we're going to get there.
Okay.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right.
You
So, you
knew I was
saw
gonna go
those.
there.
It's the thing is it's not outside the realm of possibility when you start looking at all of this stuff, right? So
Right.
anyway, they find that there's these big shafts going down, and it's deep. Like these are some really, really, really long shafts, and then it gets to this bottom void, which kind of looks like a really big square. That is, get this, 2 kilometers in length.
Wow.
2 kilometers. So you're
That's
talking about a
crazy.
mile
Yeah.
0.68, right? A mile
Yeah.
long void, which means it's a big open space.
That's crazy.
So what's down there? That's the next question, right? If it's big and it's empty, what's down there? And the structure's mind blowing. Like this just having this there rewrites everything we know about the Giza Plateau.
Right. Right.
And that alone will shake everything.
But I mean, here's the thing. I feel like everything that we know is basically a lie. So we're going to find out things like this, and then no one's going to question it because they say, "Oh, well, this was fake news," and blah blah blah. And as much as people want to say they're awake, they still, if it's not reported on the news, they don't believe it. And if the news says it's fake, they do believe it. It's like mind blowing. And it's like, what research will you go and do? And it's hard to research things like that, right? Because you don't have the technology. So you're kind of going down this rabbit hole of like, what's the truth and what's not the truth, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now we know that the truth is that there's more beneath the desert than there is
Yes.
above it. And I think these things are untouched because no one's been below the bottom of the pyramid that we know of right now since Zahi Hawass was kind of working around the
Right.
the Sphinx or the Sphinx. It's the what's the name of the lion thing? The Sphinx. I couldn't
Yes.
remember it. And Napoleon sort of discovers it when he's out in Africa trying to figure things out, and it was buried up to its tip in sand, right? So
Right.
this thing's been under there, and it hasn't been touched probably for a very, very, very long time. So whatever's down there is probably original. You know what I mean? And
Original. And if
untouched.
it's people, then do they get light and different things like we do? Do they get sun? Like we all say we live in the matrix and you can see crazy different, like some people say they see two suns. Are we seeing their world? Like, is that the real world? Like the true world?
Is it
You
the
know,
home of the lizard people? Like, are there things living alive down there? 2 kilometers is pretty big. It's probably not
that's
enough
pretty
to.
big.
It's probably not enough to sustain somebody. Like, how the heck would you grow food and stuff down there, right? I mean, if it is happening, that would be mine. That would also change the world, right? Which kind of
Unless they're extraterrestrial beings and they don't need food.
Well, let's start talking about that because now we've established that the pyramids are big, they're beautiful, just the
Yeah.
pyramids themselves. So let's look at the Egyptian story of Osiris. Have you ever looked into that? Like how their
No,
whole god thing deals.
but you
So
can
any
educate us.
so to give you the Reader's Digest version, Osiris essentially gets all cut up. His wife rescues him because his brother killed him, threw him into the river, brought him back, and
Jesus.
he goes on this journey to resurrection, right? Because that was the real
Yeah.
reason that the Egyptians did what they did, is because they were always looking to resurrect, or at least create life after they die, right? Why do you think they made
Right.
mummies?
Well, right.
And their whole
That's I'm gonna touch on that, but you go ahead because I have a thought.
okay, hold on to it.
Yeah.
And when other pharaohs died, they were believed to be the incarnation of Osiris on earth. So, whenever the king would die, he'd have to go through 12 gates in order to enter the underworld, where he could then enter into the underworld and be resurrected. And it's not shocking that there's 13 or 15 of these tubes going down from the bottom of the pyramid that almost line up with the number of gates that Pharaoh has to pass through. You following me on this one so far?
Yeah.
You tracking
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes. This
So,
was crazy.
so symbolically, those pillars represent the gates that he would have to go through to get to the underworld. And is it any
Right.
shocking that those gates are going straight down
No.
from the king's chamber?
Which
Think
crazy.
about it. It's unreal. So right now, I've kind of set the stage that this place mirrors the beliefs of the underworlds of the Egyptians.
Right. What if that's not just the underworld though, too? Like, what if that's part of because I've been studying a lot about like reincarnation and like the books of the Bible, God's real name, like all of that, right? Going down that. What if this is like part of where you go? Maybe that is the key to the promised land. Like, I listen, I believe Antarctica, there's part of the promised land is there, but then is the promised land spread out through different portals of entry through the world? Isn't that I know it's a crazy, but that's what you're making me
Well,
think about in saying this.
yeah, because essentially gates are like portals. Even Ezekiel's. I mean, it was Jacob's ladder, right? He kept watching the angels climbing the
Yeah.
ladder up into heaven, right? It's just a different pillar, a gateway,
Yes. Yeah.
right? So this one just happens to be going in the opposite direction, and you could physically walk it.
That's
So
what
you
I'm
could,
saying. So physically walk it. So like we're not going to go and like check it out like they told us. And then what? What are they going to do? Like what they did with Antarctica, and they won't let us go into it because only the world leaders know what's in Antarctica. Don't you
sure,
think that's a little crazy? So is
yes.
this going to be that same thing where they put like now we know this, it's out in like the news. Are they going to make it to where you can't go in it, like or near it, like Area
Well, it's
51?
already that way because the antiquities people in Egypt own everything there, so you can't get down there unless they say so. I'm just curious, have they already been down here or not and haven't told anybody? And I think if they had found it, they would have shown it because their kind of ego says that they would do such a thing, right?
You think they would though, depending on what you
Yeah,
see?
because there's too much tourism dollars they'll turn that into. Plus, the if Zahi Hawass is still in charge, he would want to be the guy that says, "Look at me, I'm the one that found the greatest Egyptian find ever."
Yeah, that's
They
true.
want
Yeah.
that, right? Because the thing we can always bet on is the human ego.
Okay, so I'm gonna comment on that. What if what's down there is this like we were talking about the extraterrestrial, and if you have that ego, because I do believe like the Matrix keeps us like they keep us enslaved through fear. So if your ego, they're not going to allow you. They will only allow that person that's walking in truth and love to like see it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it because they built it. So yes, here's what I'm getting at: is that my first theory is that it was made by the Egyptians, so it reflects their religious beliefs. Because if you have to go to the underworld in order to resurrect, He would have to
Yeah.
die. He would be mummified. He would be taking down these pillars. He would be taken into the underworld after he solved all the riddles of the 13 gates, which is
Right.
what he has to do. Then there's 3 at the end who gets to say whether he becomes immortal and resurrects or not. And then after that, he enters another gate. And then that's where they say that Osiris resurrects. So what
Yeah.
if
So
those
what if you
pillars
go
go
in
down?
and you don't come out?
Well, maybe there's lots of them down there. Maybe it because it reflects their religion, right? And if that's the
Yeah.
first, is the Egyptians built it. He has to also travel through the underworld. This thing's 2 kilometers long. There would be a trip you would have to make from one side of the other to get to the end of that giant burial chamber. He would essentially be walking across the underworld to
Right.
resurrect.
Right.
So when they say this is how Osiris did this in their legends, it was based on the very buildings they created in order to make sure the process happens. And
Right.
that's going to be the archaeological view, right? Because your buildings always reflect your culture. You can see it in Native
Yeah.
American buildings. They're always kind of round, right? Because of the
For sure.
medicine wheel. The Egyptians had a deep belief in the underworld, and it was such a big belief in the underworld, they decided to build the underworld underneath the very tombs where they expected to resurrect. So as soon as he goes to the portal to resurrect, you simply just bring him back. Now the question is, when he returned, was he still alive?
This is so crazy because it goes back, like, if you compare it to like even what Walt Disney did in
Yeah.
like mummifying himself so he could come back, like that's they're not the only, like I'm saying, they're not the only culture that does that. So is there something to be said about it? Because like, why are these people doing it? Like they have so much money and so much connection that they would know if it would work or would not. Unless they goes to the ego part and then they're just so like, I'm immortal and whatever, and then you kill yourself and it's like there's a 50-50 chance it's one or the other. That they either absolutely 100% know or that they just have so much money that they're just stupid and
Absolutely. So, there's kind of 2 periods of Egypt, right? There
yeah.
was the old and the new. And in the old, there were so many mummies made, they used to be thrown into the ovens of trains as fuel to keep the steam engines going through Egypt. There were that many mummies, right? And this
Yeah.
could have also been like a large evangelical thing. You wrap up your mummy, you simply walk them through, you take them down, you rock them through the underworld, they resurrect, you bring them up, they're ready for burial, you pay somebody 2 quarters, and you just got the trip to the underworld that's required by your religion, right? It was either set aside for the highly important people or everybody, because everybody mummified in Egypt. I mean, they mummified the damn
Yeah.
cats, for God's sake, and alligators, right?
Crazy.
And there's even a river described. Like he has to travel through this thing on a boat, right? Is what
Yeah.
Osiris is writing. So I'm curious, is there underground water under there? Like, did they build a river? And this is the archaeological perspective that makes the most sense. Like the Egyptians build it. One of the things I put on there is maybe they built the pyramid on top of this facility because they had to put their own spin on it. Because Khafre decides to build a pyramid on top of something that he knows is the underworld, and he would control the underworld, therefore, and control all resurrection.
What if it's not the underworld? What if there's like people say we live in a dome in the Matrix? What if there is something above us? They have to come down to our level. That's traveling to our level. And we had to travel down to that level to ascend to that like higher consciousness of what people talk about. Like,
Sure.
what if this is a process even for us, like that we're supposed to figure out how to go to that underworld?
That would make a lot of sense because it's like a trip, right? It's a portal. It's another place. Like whatever this thing is,
Yeah.
without going down there, I'm making the assumption that it represents the underworld because based on the ones that built it,
Yeah.
it represents their religion and the beings that exist, those celestial beings would exist there on Earth, right? So it becomes a meeting
Yes.
place of the gods.
Well, and it's also we call it the underworld, but what if it's really the the true world? We
Well, they
think
had,
that
yeah,
it's just underground, but what if we're stuck in this dome here across the world, right? In this matrix or whatever you want to call it, we're stuck in it and like that, and who knows? What if there's like there's another layer to get you have to keep ascending to different parts depending on where your like level of
yeah.
consciousness is.
And if you're an immortal being, you can just probably exist without air, food, or water. So you could just be in this underground place without any harm.
Which they do say we are immortal. We talked about this on one of the podcasts where they say we can bend the spoon. You take the spoon with your mind and you can bend it. And they've like a lot of these projects that they had in the 70s, 80s, and 90s with kids. I feel like I think there were a lot of kids back then that had that power and they took that power away from them. And because those are the kids that would lead us to that right path, like basically parting the Red Sea. They would be the Moses of this time.
Well,
I don't know. That could be totally
yeah.
crazy and out there. It's just a thought.
Until we go down there, we don't know. So I really hope they allow us to go down there. But that was the first perspective I want to put out there, is that it was made kind of like by the Egyptians for the Egyptians, right? They made the underworld real because it was so important to resurrection. That is most likely the answer that we'll run into. I think it'll be the highly probable answer.
Sure.
And the one that is boring. Let's be honest. It's cool. Like for the historians, they're going to be like, this is amazing. It'll rewrite the understanding of the Egyptians. Yes, it'll be earth-shattering. It'll be Nobel Prize worthy sort of find, but it's boring, right? It's boring.
Which is, I don't know. I feel like when we see things like this, I tend to be on the more side of what they would call a conspiracy because I just don't believe it would be that boring. I don't think they're going to tell us, oh, this is fake news or this is debunked or whatever if it wasn't true, but they also have to tell us what they're doing. So they told us what they're doing and then told us it was the lie. It's like gaslighting, right? Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, but it's like, man, I wish that they would start like taking normal people. Like, okay, you know what, Josh, we're going to take you and you're going to go with us and we're going to report on, like, you're going to report on it. The problem is how do you get people that won't sell out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To report the truth.
Oh, you couldn't. I don't know. It'd be really hard. Yeah. I don't know. Can we step? Now you want to hear the next step in this? What am I thinking? All right. So the second is that it wasn't made by the Egyptians, and it was adopted by the Egyptians.
Ooh,
right, and it still could have been the ancestors of the Egyptians. It just wasn't the Egyptians as we understand them now. They didn't build it, but they certainly adopted it because the stories of death and rebirth in the underworld probably last generations. Like the thing that really held Egypt together was religion, right? And its exclusivity due to the desert around it. Like nobody could conquer Egypt because you just couldn't cross the desert.
Right. Right. But that's the thing is like maybe you can't. Like again, they tell you can't. But where are the tools that helps you so you can? There's got to be a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you're talking about tools, like it could be religious tools and it could be physical tools, right? Like a lot of people say, where are all the tools that built these structures?
Right.
And there's not a lot. But we see evidence of bisymmetrical like carving of Egyptian statues, meaning that if you take the two halves on a picture and you were to superimpose them over top, it would look exactly the same. So it has perfect symmetry in their statues, which is something that we get on like CAD machines and those kind of cutters. So they're cutting with a precision that's so profound that we can't reproduce it in stone, but we can kind of do it on a 3D printer in your house. Let that sink in, right?
Which is crazy. And it makes you wonder, like, because religion is such like a base for so much. And did they steal it? And then who are the true people? Are they the Egyptians? Because like even if you think about like the Jewish people, there's like the Jews and the Khazarian Jews, right? And like I think that the true Jews didn't fight Hitler. They were fighting Hitler was on their side and they were fighting. Like that's a whole other story for another time. But think about like if that was such a twisted story for us in history, what's the truth here? And who are the true Egyptians? Like, right? Like what's their true like culture, history, and who did they steal it from? That's like the key right there. To go, it's kind of like here's a story. What's the story behind the story?
So it turns out that a lot of the genetic information from the individuals that they do have mummies from showed, at least if in the higher echelon of Egyptian people, were very Greek, which is just on the other side of the Mediterranean Sea for them, right? So A lot of people don't like to hear that, but at least their genes mean they came from somewhere else. At least the elite people in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
And I want to start thinking about, you look at Exodus in the Bible, and the
Yeah.
Hebrew people were slaves to Pharaoh while they were building the pyramids. Now, were they
Right.
building the pyramids, or were they repairing the pyramids? Right? They were just called skilled labor, is how the
Right.
word translates, not necessarily slaves. So it makes us need to think about whether the Egyptians actually built this, or
Right.
if they were simply caretakers, which is why they would
Yeah.
have the Hebrew people work on it. And the next part is that if they were simply caretakers, who were the real builders?
Or maybe they're protectors, not even just the like caretaker, but kind of the same thing, right? But just the protector of the secrets. So like maybe there's an alliance there too with the Greeks or whoever that we don't even know, and that they're protecting something for them. You protect us in this, and we will, you get something in return, whatever that might be.
I'm glad you said that, because now we want to look at the list of the Egyptian gods, right?
I need to
Beings
put
with
it.
celestial origins that are like completely ingrained into Egyptian society, and there's tons of gods, right?
Yeah.
They dedicate stuff to these gods, statues, cause the even the tombs that they would put them in. Everything
Yeah.
was dedicated to a god. So what the gods are selling in return is evangelism, a way into heaven,
Right.
right? That's the exchange with these gods. And these builders might be the gods themselves. And these gods are always kind of representatives of being half human, half animal giants. Because the Egyptian gods are
Right.
always giants, which is another theme that keeps coming up.
Which they do try to recreate with which I've seen, and it's crazy because then I'd probably be put in a mental hospital. But like they have tried to recreate that with man, and animal. Like a lot of this is where a lot of the elite and different people have tried to do that, and it's an abomination. But they've been successful in some of it, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's called chimeric gene splicing or something. Like you make an animal that's made up of the, other parts of an animal. It's like the chimera from the Greek
Right.
myth. And you see that a lot in the Egyptian gods. When you look at some of the old shared area stories of giants, they were known to perform bestiality. And
Yep.
typically, what was born of the bestiality union was some sort of monster.
Right.
Tons of monsters. And there's lots of monsters in Egyptian and Greek mythology. The whole
Right.
area is rife with it. So here we've got a little bit of a, is this a clue that there were giants just having relations with humans and animals to create races of giants? Sounds familiar, right?
Well, right. It makes me think like the story David and Goliath. What was Goliath? What was he
Yeah.
really? You know what I mean? Was he just a giant or was he what they created? Right? Like some crazy. And here, okay, I'm going to take it to another level because again, I've been studying this. What if we are I'm not saying we are the most high or the creator, but what if we are the gods? If we can bend a spoon with our mind and we can go to that level, then and the creator lives within us, then doesn't the creator give us that ultimate, not that we are above anything or above anyone, but that we have that power, that we have to raise our own like souls from the dead into what like God wants us to be.
Because now you're kind of touching on the place I'm still going. So if it wasn't built by the Egyptians, it was built by an earlier civilization.
Right.
And, that rewrites history, but still there's a terrestrial origin, right?
Yeah.
Because this is just an older group of people. Are there other buildings like it, that exist out there? And when you look at this other civilization, what if they were so advanced they were capable of genetic manipulation with humans and animals? They were capable of building giant facilities for this sort of stuff. They were capable of
Yeah.
massive cyclopean building, right? This ancient
Yes.
civilization just had all of the capacity to do that. And it would be no surprise that there would be these weird animal genetic hybrids, because we do it now. Just because we've done it now doesn't mean that somebody else behind us didn't do the same thing. We just don't have evidence of it.
Well, I did post a video a while back, and I wish I would have known we were going to go here because I would have had you put it up.
Yeah.
But it was a man and like an animal, and he was like, I mean, that little fucker was fast. Like it was half and half. Like it was not had a man's face, but had like the animal. And I cannot tell you what animal parts they were, but it was definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So you've got this potentially terrestrial civilization that's highly advanced that has been playing God, right?
Yeah.
Genetically splicing things together. It would explain why there was all these stories of dragons and minotaurs and cyclopses and all of these animals that were like written about in the area, because the Mediterranean area, I mean, you want to talk about a rich history of monsters all the way from like Turkey to Greece to
Right.
Egypt. All those places around there had all these stories of these giant animals, unicorns too, which bizarrely enough, but
Which it's funny because I just asked my kids this. I'm like, do you think mermaids are real? Like, I think there's such like we can look at the underground here, but then the ocean is such a mystery too. Like, what world? Like, is there only one world underneath us? Are there a lot of different worlds underneath us? Like, at different cities. You know what I mean? And do those worlds know about us? Like, and
yeah. Yeah, and what if these worlds are separated by a dimension and they found a way to make a doorway that you could just simply walk through, and that's what's down there.
which I think some of them have. Like, you see these crazy stories of like, if you put two mirrors like facing each other, it'll like open up a portal, which you don't know what portal it will open. Like, there's certain crazy, like, what are they called? Like, not conspiracies, but superstitions. Like, if you do
Yeah.
certain superstitions, it's gonna like open up portals. If you do certain things in your bedroom, it'll open, or in your closet, it'll open up a portal, but you never know what portal you're opening. So it could be like to this evil, like underground world, or it could be this like utopia, amazing thing.
So where do people get the context for that? Where did they get the idea that something like that existed?
Well,
And
that's what
it's
I'm
been
saying.
around a
Are
long
people just
time.
so imagination, or they know because they experienced it?
Yeah. Yeah, the next part of this is if the Egyptians didn't build it and it was built by this earlier intelligent civilization, would they have signed it? Meaning, how would you know it's their work? And a lot of builders out there, what they call cyclopean building, is those things that are made out of giant stones, right? Usually have
Yeah.
almost no writing on them. Some of the earliest, oldest stuff don't have a lot written on them.
Don't they
Some
have
do.
pictures like cavemen kind of?
I'm talking about when they built. You look at some of the buildings in Israel, Turkey, some of those places in the world. There's bottoms of some of these large structures, which are just huge cut stone slabs laid down in squares, and there was some sort of temple on top of that. The only thing is they really didn't. A lot of them, a lot of the really really early ones don't have any signature on it, like made by like me or
Yeah.
X was here. Now the Egyptians were very good at signing stuff saying this was my tomb, this is who's buried here, right? They're kind
Right.
of like divas like that. They loved showing off that opulence. But the earlier stuff, there was no signature written on it. And as I'm looking into this, I'm like, there's got to be more. And there's a lot of authors who've
Yeah.
thought about this, like Graham Hancock, some of the others. I've read all of his stuff, by the way. There are signatures
Love it.
in some of these buildings because each one has to be laid down mathematically. And when you lay them down mathematically, they all have a relation to pi, either one,
Which,
two, three, or four times, right? So there's a signature hidden in the very layout of the buildings themselves, which means a deeper signature has been associated with each of these buildings. The very layout is my signature, right? This is me because I built it this way.
which is crazy that you're talking about the mathematics of it, because if like even now you go back to like the freedom and how to unslave yourself, and a lot of it is through tax and numbers. You
Yeah.
just don't know how to do it because you're never taught that. And unless you are like, even I think even tax accountants don't know that because they don't like go and study how to like unslave yourself. So it's like, does this all circle together, or is it
Yeah.
is it a like unilateral event?
Don't know. I think it's a long running event because sometimes not only do they show you to their relation in pi, they also lay out some of these grand buildings in like the pointing towards a constellation or
Right.
true north or south. So every time, they're during the equinoxes, sunlight comes in and sunlight exits, or there's the big snake and the ones in Egypt, right? There's these
Yeah.
surprising signatures of relation to pi and laying it out towards a constellation. We see that because, Orion's belt was what the three big pyramids were laid out on. So whoever built it not
Right.
only had an understanding of what they were looking at above them, they also understood what was looking below them. Now do you see how the Egyptian thing's coming full circle? Because it's been laid out
Yes.
to look at heaven, then you live on earth, which is the pyramid itself, and then there would be the underground. So that's the big religious implication here. Whether the Egyptians built it or not, it is a perfect place on earth where that religion could be conducted, and everything's still terrestrial.
Do you think that you have like these trafficking pastors and like the religion, do you think that they're like a part of those beings, and like some of them are evil and some of them are good, and they're not even real like humans? That's why you kind of see like the shape shifting and different things like that. Do you know what I'm
I
talking
wouldn't
about?
see why not, because if they're a really advanced intelligent civilization that was around then, what makes me think they're not around now?
Right.
So if they were capable of building all this stuff underground, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff they can build anywhere that they could have hidden. Maybe their technology was so advanced they've been flying around those little tic tac shaped UFOs forever,
Totally are.
right?
Yeah, I'm
So
trying to find this thing of this guy and
yeah,
I can't find it, but I'll have to send it to you. I'll post it later, but it's creepy. I know I have it.
yeah. But it's pretty wild how Egypt right now looks like a place where people actually had heaven and then earth and then an underworld where they could physically walk through. It's no wonder all the stories that they had in Egypt talked about an underworld like it was alive and real, because it was and is alive and real to them, right?
Yeah. To me it's like I kind of believe it is alive and real. I mean, if you think about the underground of like if we believe that these elite can drive underground and there's these cities or there's this whole city under DIA, why would it be any different where these pyramids and different things are?
There could be an entire network of underground tunnels. There could be,
What if they have their own like you know how they have like the politics and the bullshit that we have up here? What if it's the same? Or maybe it's not, maybe it's even better. They're just one big utopia
yeah,
because they learned how to coexist without the ego and without the fear.
yeah. And there's a crazy assumption here that they're benevolent. Let's not forget that usually when you're that advanced, a lot of us become cattle, right?
Yeah.
There's just resources. What are their resources? What do they need? And what do they use, right? And we might find that because the next piece I go to is that if it wasn't built by the Egyptians and it wasn't built by another terrestrial race, then the only other well, there's lots of it. The only other technologically capable group would be an extraterrestrial group that has shown up and built something there because they have the knowledge and the know-how.
Yeah. And they don't have to survive like we have to survive undependent on the sun and different things. But maybe we don't even have to. Maybe we're extraterrestrial beings and we've been so dumbed down that we need this food, we need this water, we need this like. But then you listen to these other people that talk about it that have done these like health journeys. I can't remember what her name is, Barbara something. She was murdered for talking about like you don't need like certain foods. These are the vitamins you need. This is how you like take care of your body. Like here's the poisons and stuff. Like maybe we are those. Maybe we created it and we're so stupid we don't even know that we created it.
Hmm, could be.
I mean,
I
that's a
know.
totally out there.
Yeah. I want to address some of the old stories from around the world about all these stories of how the gods came from the stars, right? They came from
Yeah,
somewhere, they showed up, and they gave everyone everything, right? That's essentially what the story of Osiris says too, is that they came from the stars and ended up here.
yeah,
So when they got here, did they use their advanced technology to build these crazy underground facilities for them to live? right? As they live, they age. Maybe they die. Maybe they leave. A lot of the gods leave, and all with the
Yeah.
promise to return. We've all heard that
Yeah.
before. And what if what's down there represents what they were, right? It would be a representation of their culture. What information would be left down there? How was it utilized by them? Have we been down there? And why would you have the ability to move to and fro, up and down the ladder, if you were?
What's funny, like there's certain people, and I'm one of them, that there's like blackout of time where I don't remember. Did I travel to these worlds? Did you travel to those worlds? Do the people that have blacked out time
Mhm.
travel to these worlds? And that's like the agreement of you can go travel here anytime you want, but then we're gonna black out when you come back. Like,
Maybe when you get that missing time, they take you somewhere, and that's a perfect place to do it because there's nothing there. There's no one to watch you. No one can get to
no
you. No one can
evidence.
touch you. There's no evidence. It'd be the perfect place to conduct whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
right? And we know
Um,
that the gods were awful overtly sexual beings. They love to try to breed and do kinds of weird genetic stuff. So what if we find under there a bunch of genetic altering devices? What if we find technology that blows our minds? Right? And it doesn't have to be something revolutionary. It's just got to be something like the capability of moving a rock without using gravity. Right? What if
right.
there's just a tool down there that shows us how to use gravity? And it shows us how to build the very things that are out there.
Oh, I believe that there's so much like, and that would be a good place to hide it because there's so much. I mean, listen, we grew up watching like the Jetsons and like they had all these crazy, all the stuff we have now. How did they know about that back then? There had to have been, listen, people's imagination, listen, people have great imagination, but not that much. Like,
Yeah.
not to the point where those things are happening now. So is this where they hide all of that stuff? You know?
Yeah, and a lot of these stories, when the gods show up, they bring with them knowledge on how to like do pharmacy, how to make medicines, how to start fires, how to work metallurgy.
Yeah.
What if there's just a hall of records down there? Edgar Casey said that underneath the Sphinx's paw would lead to a chamber of amazing secrets in Egypt, and people thought those prophecies are like 1910ish, 1920s.
I believe those though.
And then all of a sudden, we've got what essentially looks like something that's so big you could put a giant mothership down there. It's
Right.
huge. Like you're talking about 2 kilometers long.
Right.
I think they said something like 30 meters tall, and I forget the width. That's huge.
That is huge. Well, think about like when they hide things, like they hid the Bible underground in the Vatican, the true Bible, the 777 books. So why, like, what is it about the underground that they know that we don't? And how much stuff do they have hidden from us? Because, like you're saying, it's so big, you can hide a lot of shit, right?
Yeah.
They also say like the Vatican hid like the gold from us and like different things. So, like, all is this stuff down there? Oh, I got the chills. I think maybe
I
it's the
know.
gold in the Bible.
Then, well, I think of the Bible, I think of Revelations when they say that a great hole opens in the earth, and out of this lake of fire comes the beast and the great horror, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty big hole. How do we know it's not connected to some sort of portal? How do we know it's not a device that can summon things? You know what I mean? Until we go down there, again, I think it's the simple explanation. We're going to find a bunch of crazy Egyptian artifacts, and it just simply represents their religion in the underworld. But there's this outside chance that you open it up and you find the ancient inhabitants of this planet. You find the ancient ones. You find the watchers from the Bible. You find aliens or demons, right? That are in
Yeah.
hell. You're essentially opening the gates of hell when you go down there, according to the perspective of the Egyptians.
Well, maybe what if there's an agreement between our world and their world of don't bother us, leave us alone, and then someone goes and it was like, hey, I'm gonna just do whatever I want, and they go do it, and then it opens up to because this world, it's a spiritual battle of what we're all going through. So is this gonna be another level of like spirituality of like fighting a bunch of crazy evil?
Yeah, it just could be the biggest doorway to
Or it could be
some.
good. It could be
It
the
can.
angels.
I have my doubts. I have
Yeah.
my doubts. I think God doesn't need a little hole in the ground to do whatever he wants to do. but the evil things that like to lurk in the dark
Yes.
want to hang out in places like that. And that's what makes me nervous is what's down there. And has anybody already been down there and they know about it and it's been cleaned out because the US government's been in Egypt for a while, right after World War II. They spent a lot of time bringing stuff home. So did the English.
I feel like the US government and like Lockheed Martin and these other huge like companies, and I believe that they absolutely know what's going on. And I think that even if like something bad was down there and they opened some portal to us, they wouldn't tell us it was too late. They would just sell us down the river because we're
Oh,
chattel
yeah.
to them. They would just be like, go kill the people. We don't care, because they all have their weird bunkers. Like, why did all these people have bunkers? Like, and can these people, these souls or these beings or whatever, not get into their bunkers? You know what I mean?
Everyone says, where could an unknown force operate and control the world from? Right? If you're a supremely advanced being, you don't even need the giant chamber you're locked away in. You just got to take over the minds around you. I
Right.
think it was Eisenhower when he was president signed a deal with an alien group saying that we could all be kidnapped and experimented on. I'm not joking. I really do.
Which they're probably doing now
Yeah.
at this point.
So, I mean, if they had a base and they've been here a long time, it would stand to reason that it'd be buried under some of the oldest stuff we have there, and it'd be hiding in plain sight. I mean, it's not plain sight; it's six hundreds of meters below ground,
Yeah.
but you'd be able to hide. No one would ever know. No one would ever believe that there would be a group that could pull this off, right? I mean, the
No,
deniability is great.
imagine you were the one that like got like kidnapped, got down there, got tested on, and then they brought you back to this world. No one would believe you. They would basically say you're crazy, and they would like put you in a mental hospital ship, mental hospital or a conservatory ship or some crazy thing to where you were controlled, because you have to be labeled as crazy, even though that's probably the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What if it's a prison meant to hold something that was never supposed to come out again?
That's crazy. Think about like evil. There's probably certain ways that you have to hold it. Like you can't hold a spiritual like. But see, that brings you back to like Area 51 too. Is that like part of that? They're holding these like really evil, like crazy. There's
So
so
if
so
so if we
much.
believe in the advanced civilization or the ET civilization that built it, they did it in one place. Do you think that they had the capacity to build it in another?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, all over the world. Which is why you look at Area 51 and you wonder why everybody wants to be deep underground there. You look at DIA and you wonder why did they have to move more dirt from underneath the IA than the entire island of Manhattan? And that was 4 years into its construction they moved that much earth?
Well, and think about DIA. When you go into DIA and you're like going to the airport and underground, you have no idea what tunnels. It's completely black. You don't know what tunnels you're going through. Are you going through their city? And they just let us transport through it. Is this a portal that we don't even know? If that train was to stop in the middle of DIA in that tunnel, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like when you
Oh, yeah.
park your car and you go through the tunnel to like go to the airport. Is that like, are they just letting us use their like the part? They're like, you can use our transport system for these people. And how many people on there are actually people flying out, or are they like
I
in
don't know.
a human skin suit?
I don't
That's
know.
crazy.
Yeah. And then maybe they're making a move through the underworld when you pull in the DIA. And the other one I'll
Yeah.
touch on is like, remember the Stargate movie, right? The whole reason they didn't come
Yes.
to this planet is because we sealed the Stargate on our end.
Yeah.
What if the Stargate has been sealed on our end because we don't want coming back what had left?
Or what if the Stargate's only sealed for like a certain like here it's 100 years? I mean, because you keep
Yeah.
hearing like there's a lot like in this year of 2025, like a lot of like stars are supposed to align and different things, like a lot of like astral, what is it? Like astrology and different things that are
Yeah.
supposed to align this year,
Planet. Yeah.
so planet. So I'm wondering, like, what if it's something like that too? It's funny because you can like go on so many different
Yeah.
like ways with this. But what's so frustrating, it's like we'll never know the truth unless we physically go and like do it, or we figure out how to ascend to those places, like where they say go remote view. But I don't think people should go and do that. I think that's like demonic.
You got to be careful with the remote viewing. I don't
Yeah,
know. Once they discovered something, the bottom line is they found something that's so new that it will probably rewrite our history. I think the reason Egypt won't go down there, the Egyptian government, is because they don't want to be perceived as the people that didn't build the pyramids, right? Because they've marketed their whole country based on we're the Egyptian builders. So that would be a hard sell to them. They're not going to want to go down there because if
well,
it
and what if
proves they're
someone knows
not
the
the
truth?
ones, they may already know that and they don't want it getting out, right? I mean, that would destroy their tourism. But I
Sure.
would say it wouldn't ruin their tourism because now you could bring it. You know how many more people would want to be there? I mean,
You
that
know how
would
many
be
conspiracy
untold
nuts would
riches.
go? I would figure
Yeah.
out how to go just to be like, oh my god, I want to like see this.
And it could also be the biggest depository of gold artifacts
Yeah,
that Egypt ever had because their underworld is described as being paved with gold and jewels. I mean, it could
right.
just be filled with the wealth of the entire Egyptian nation that ever existed was sealed down there. Because there wasn't a lot of treasure, quote unquote. It was always put in tombs and stuff. You know what I mean? The
Right.
wealth was hidden in the sands. I think this might be one of the reasons they won't go down there, or maybe they do, is because there's going to be so much wealth.
Is
Maybe
that
they
why
do
you
go
think
down.
they labeled it as a conspiracy and like they debunked it in the news?
Well, they want to. The problem is it's really hard to deny the science. At least those things
Right.
work really, really well. But if I'm a group that wants to keep stuff like that secret, who wants to keep the esoteric secret, right? I know it and you
Yeah.
don't, and that makes me more powerful over you. Yeah, they're going to want to debunk it. They're going to push to debunk it. In fact, they're probably going to create a whole new narrative, which is what we're starting to see out there,
Sure.
is that they want to push one thing and they kind of want it to go away. But this
Yeah.
Italian group, they don't want it to go away because they're like, hey, let us dig down there. We found it. Let us go take a look. It's earth shattering. Whatever's down there's earth shattering, whether it's
Yeah.
benign or extraterrestrial.
Yeah. And that's why they don't want us to know about it, which is, it, man, it's, I wish that like for a day, like if you could like choose like something you could do for a day, is that you could know what like a lot of these world leaders know, and do they like know, and you could find out like because they have to know. Like you think the people in Egypt, like the higher ups, don't know like what's truly going on. There's no way that they wouldn't be, unless there are extraterrestrial beings, and then you just die if you get close. You know what I mean? And they don't
What
let you. Like they think you're going to war with them if you're, you
what
know.
if they get all the way down there and they find a being that's 10 feet tall who has the head of a dog and looks exactly like the representations that are on their walls? Horus has a falcon's head. Anubis does have a jackal's head,
It'll be
right?
Dogman.
But it would make sense though. I mean, then you would understand why they had all of this art in Egypt. It
Yeah.
reflected their actual gods. Like all of the
Right.
art in Egypt reflects the heaven, the earth, and what their version of hell is, right? Where did they get the
Right.
context? And what if these beings are there? What if they're living inside this place? What if there's something that's alive down there? What if all the gods are there? What if there's something like at least calling itself a god that's down there, right? There's only one god to me, but
But they do like if they have certain powers, whatever, and they're what if there are multiple gods down there, and that's like what you said, it's like a prison for all of these. But if you get them together, their power is crazy. And because we don't know what our power is, they could destroy us, and they could, and it doesn't matter what world leader would be there because they don't have that power or the tools to, if you were to let that like beast loose, what would happen?
when they talk about
Maybe.
the Antichrist will have the power to essentially make would be so powerful and so convincing that you will deny God for him.
Yeah.
Imagine if you get down there and they promise immortality. The secret to immortality is in hell, where
Right.
the Egyptians claim to have kept the secret of immortality.
Right. Oh man. It I I wish I knew. Like, this is so fascinating to me. That's why I told you, I was like, oh, let's talk about this. When you said it, I was like, yeah, that's great. Because I like started going down that rabbit hole, and I'm like, man, there's so many ways you could go about it. It can be like this crazy, horrible thing. It could be a good thing. Most likely not. I think when they're hiding things, they think that the American people, or just not even the American people, the world in general, the people of the world don't have like that, they couldn't handle it for whatever reason, which is crazy because they've mind controlled the world so great that even if they told us the truth, you would still have people to be like, that's BS. And even if the news told them that's not real, that's not like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Anyway. Hey, gang,
Well,
if you
we're at
haven't,
it.
yeah, go ahead. I was wrapping
No,
it up. You do it.
you go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you haven't bought our t-shirts, now is the time. There's links in there. Buy our t-shirts. We want to keep this going. Share this with your friends. The more and more you share this, the more and more we get the information out. And when the hard-hitting stuff hits, we're gonna be the first to talk to you about it. So share with your friends. Like, subscribe. Ring the bell. Whatever it takes. Make the ding happen.
Like, subscribe, share, all of the above. We love you guys. We appreciate you watching. We will be back next Tuesday at 4 Eastern Standard Time. Thanks.